Dark Souls has a variety of interestingly named weapons. Besides making astute observations, I also make challenge videos for Dark Souls. This one revolves around the alphabetical order people seem to enjoy, so I'm doing that with the weapons in this game. The premise is that I have to use a different weapon for every boss with weapons in alphabetical order. An example being that I kill a boss with a weapon that starts with A, then the next one that starts with B, and so on and so forth. There are 26 bosses in Dark Souls 1, and there are 26 letters in the English alphabet. How convenient. The goal of this video will be to kill each boss in the game in this fashion. Some quick rules before we start is that for the purpose of the challenge, I will also be applying this restriction to my armor and rings, and every offensive consumable. There are some other things I've modified for my own sanity, but I'll mention those when they become relevant. As the nature of this run is going to have me level my stats frequently, I will try to keep my vitality endurance low to compensate, and ultimately, I'd rather have fun than mindless frustration, so some of my decisions revolve around that. That's all, I think. So let's begin. So first, we need to choose our starting class, and... oh. It would appear that none of them start with a weapon that starts with the letter A. Of course, we could just act like this run is dead in the water, but let's work our way around it. I wanted to count the battle axe the bandit starts with because its class is just axe, but I thought that was lame, so I just defaulted to my usual thief with black fire bombs and do the usual trick where I kill the asylum demon without actually killing him. This allows me to gain the key to leave without the boss being dead. Also note that there is a way to get out of the asylum by starting as the cleric, but I didn't want to try something I hadn't before, so let's just roll out of the asylum and roll on down to the first weapon to begin this run, the Astora Straightsword. It's located in the Valley of Drakes near the Undead Dragon. No big deal as we take flight back to Firelink, and I want to book it right back to the asylum. I figure this will give back some of the leeway I took on getting out. Fun fact, with some well-placed jumps, you can get up the nest without opening the elevator shortcut that leads to the Undead Parish. So I run back through the asylum and... yeah, clearly this wasn't going to be difficult, so the letter A is down. Let's move on to letter B. B has some more options. To begin with, I head back to the Valley of Drakes, and I figure I need some armor. Let's get the Brigand set. I end up dying, and die again before getting my souls back. It then dawned on me that I already had a valid armor set, the black leather set, so that's nice. Anyways, we take a pit stop at Base and Bonfire, and man, it feels really weird not using the Grass Crest shield immediately. Let's push off the Black Knight for a really good valid weapon. Oh, dang. Well, that would have been nice. Good thing I have this backup I got from the asylum. So making our way to Andre, I just want to clear one thing up that I will try to keep the run as glitch minimal as possible. One exception to this I will allow myself is a soul duplication glitch that will allow me to save a lot of time of grinding for materials, levels, and drops. So if you see that I have a questionable amount of souls and humanity throughout the video, that's why. Again, I really only leveled weapon-related stats, so we're going to be operating in the danger zone for much of the run. Anyways, I leveled up enough to use the Black Knight sword and buy the Crest of Artorias. Seeing as how I'm in the area, let's take on Sif. While Sif isn't meant to be fought this early, with a great weapon, even upgraded, the Black Knight sword does enough damage that we don't spend too much time taking him down. Alright, let's head on to letter C. Well hey, we at least got a piece of usable gear from this fight. The Covenant of Artorias. Oh, God, no. Operating under my rule set, this is the only time I'll ever be able to use this item, meaning that we need to kill the 4 kings. This early, with little investment into my character. I know that some might say I should make an exception for key items, but honestly, this shakes my video format up enough, so I'm okay with it. But this is going to be tough. So let's do some preparation. I start by meeting with the Undead Merchant and acquiring our armor, the chainmail set. Not gonna lie, I actually like the look of it on the female character way more than the male. I mean that in the least creepy way possible, by the way. Anyways, it isn't the greatest, but it's the best we're realistically gonna do So now let's deal with my weapon of choice. I figured I'd like to be a bit original, so I ended up glitching myself into the depths so I could talk to Domal and buy the Crystal Greatsword. Can't be upgraded, but it should offer a good flat damage for a low-level character such as myself. Now let's head to New Londo and clear out Ghost Town, including Ingward, so we can drain the water early. Alright, let's get an idea of what we're looking at. Yeah, not great. Even with the Crest Shield absorbing a ton of magic damage, the damage of our weapon is bad, and given the DPS nature of the fight, we don't look that great. Even after multiple attempts. It doesn't help the first king likes to spam his explosion, making the fight even worse as time goes on. We're gonna need to rework this strategy a bit. Alright, so the only real change here is that I'm changing up my weapon. While the letter C does have a lot of options, I decided to go with the tried and true Claymore. Boring? A bit. Effective? Very. I decided to glitch back into the depths so I could grab the Ember. I grabbed the bigger Ember in New Londo, and then glitched into Sin so I could buy as much upgrade material as possible. Please note, I could grind for these materials without needing to glitch, but I'm just saving myself some time. Anyways, I end my weapon at around plus 13, and it's time to retry. It's no first try easy, but the damage is much better. I also bought some charcoal pine resin from the Lady Undead Merchant, so I thought that was fitting. The best strategy was trying to avoid the attacks without dodging so I could keep the damage up. After a couple of minutes, we end the fight and end the letter C with a bang. I could have gotten the Chloranthy ring, but whatever, I was too lazy to go get it. Anyways, we set up base here in the Abyss, and we have access to the Darkwraith Covenant. Conveniently enough, this is going to be the source of our next letter, D. After glitching my way to a ton of humanity, I give it all to Koth, who rewards me with a set of armor, a weapon, and a Dark Hand. All of which start with D. Essentially just doing a Darkwraith cosplay. And up next, we have the Gargoyles. Can we just talk about how a red hand does more damage than the actual weapon? Like a ton more, for less stamina. Someone should really think about doing a run like this. As you can imagine, it really isn't that tough considering I have bulky armor and a great weapon. They go down with ease and we can ring the first bell. Now we can move on to the next letter. That letter, of course, being E. We don't have a ton in the way of weapons, mostly just the S stock, but it's easily enough acquired here. I also decided to rock the Eastern set. I know the Elite Knight set was right next door, but let's throw some variety into these runs. Up next, we got the Moonlight Butterfly. I only bothered to level up the S stock a couple of times, so this fight was long and drawn out. I ran out of healing and almost died, but I avoided enough hits and was able to clutch out the victory for a relatively quick section. It was at this point I realized that the Abyss was a really great early game safe haven. I never gave it any thought, but while I knew you could teleport from the Abyss without the Lord Vessel, it never occurred to me that it's really nice to be able to use it as an early game teleport system. Anyways, we've got the letter F up next, and I decided to go with the Falchion, a curved sword that is quick and when leveled to plus 10, does decent damage, especially against our next boss, Pinwheel. Even though this is relatively early game, there is no doubt about this fight at any point. We wipe the floor with him quick enough, so let's just speed to letter G. Before fighting Pinwheel, I took some time to take a rest in a comfy coffin and awoke in a strange cave and ended up worshipping the god of death. In return, he gave me a cool sword. Thankfully it starts with a G, so let's just keep going. We embark on down to Blighttown and to everyone's favorite half-lady, half-spider. No armor as per usual. I wanted to use the gargoyle equipment, but I was too caught up in the Darkrai stuff I forgot about it. It's nice to fight Quelaag with a weapon that can fight past her tankiness, even unupgraded. She goes down and we can ring the second bell and head up to Sin's Fortress. But first, let's get our letter H gear, the hand axe, from the Undead Merchant. Yeah, it's not going to do a ton of damage to this absolute unit known as the Iron Golem, but it actually did more than I anticipated. I guess since some of you may wonder why I haven't touched magic at all, I just thought it would be a bit too difficult since it's all about having both a catalyst and spell that lines up alphabetically, so I figured let's not complicate things that much. Alright, onwards and upwards to Anor Londo. Good thing I prepared for this by grabbing the Iaeto from Blighttown. There's an armor set we could use, but I'd rather not. So now it's the Naked Ninja versus the Gruesome Twosome. I'm not sure why, but fighting this boss with a katana always feels so satisfying. I died first attempt, but second attempt it's an easy jaunt to phase 2. If you're wondering about the boss count, technically if you count Ornstein and Smo as different bosses, then it's actually 27. But to fit my narrative and challenge, it's one whole encounter. Oh yeah, this boss fight is still going on. I inflict some bleed onto Smo, and the fight is over rather quickly. Alright, cool. Up to Guinevere, and... oh, well I guess we'll be back for you later. So now time for letter J. Thankfully we have quite a few oh no. Of course it's the Jagged Ghost Blade. Unfortunately the grinding of this run begins here. The basic premise here is that I use a transient curse and clear out as many ghosts as I can. Let me just say that this ghost house here is infuriating and at such a low level. A couple of hits kill me. All that being said, the grind didn't take that long. I believe I hit around 60 transient curses before the weapon finally dropped. It took me about an hour to get. And what do we get? An actually decent weapon. Quick and does more damage than you'd expect. So what are we gonna do with this? That's right, use it for all of 5 minutes as we kill the Capra Demon with ease. Even without armor or any poise to be spoken of, is no problem as the dogs go down in one hit, and it also inflicts bleed. So I hope you all enjoyed that section. With that out of the way, let's go on to letter K. Hopefully nothing is painful about this part. You knew the way I said that meant that this next section was in fact painful. The only valid weapon to use is... the Night Shield. Yep. At least the Jagged Ghost Blade was a weapon. This is just torturous. And the boss we're fighting is the Gaping Dragon, a very tanky boss. Even upgraded, this is a drag. At least I got a cool armor set. It was really annoying when the Gaping Dragon decided to land on me, instantly killing me. Is it sad to say this boss was on the higher end of boss attempts? After enough masochism, I escape with only a tiny bit of my sanity intact. Let's get out of this section into the letter L. Let's start out with returning to the water basin and picking up our next set we'll be using, the leather armor. And would you look at that, a longbow. That reminds me. Alright, with that taken out of the way, we need our weapon for our upcoming fight against Gwendolyn. Unfortunately, it's gonna require a bit of farming. While L did have decent options, I opted for the large club. The middle evolution of the club family. Not too hard, not too soft. It drops from these barbarians you find in Blighttown. My main strategy here was to kill these 3 and reload. Thankfully it didn't take too much time to get, maybe 10 minutes at most. It also inflicts poison, but that's irrelevant as we need to run through this long hallway where we can only get in a few hits at a time. Need I say more? For M, I thought I would go with something a bit more unique, and upgraded a spear to +10 where I could then ascend it into the Moonlight Butterfly Horn. Yeah, this is a cool looking weapon. Not nearly as cool as its shield counterpart, but it also has the disadvantage of doing pure magic damage. I used that word because this letter coincided with me wanting to do the DLC, so I had to go through the painful process of ending the Hydra's life very slowly, then heading to the archives, where I spent an equal amount of time clearing out this room so I could take out the Golem 1v1. Yeah, this weapon was a horrible idea since these guys have crazy high magic resistance. Hopefully it'll prove useful in our fight against the next boss, Sanctuary Guardian. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Also wanted to point out, I'm using the Mask of the Child I got from Pinwheel for some extra stamina regen. This fight was long. Like extremely boring and exciting in the worst ways. It took a long time because my damage was putrid, and my low vitality meant I could really only handle a hit or two without dying. Note that this is how this run is gonna go the rest of the way. After what feels like forever, we take him down, and I'm here already, so let's head on over to Artorias. And with that, we take on the letter N. Let's see what gear we have to work with. Alright, no armor. Not great, but it's not that bad considering, oh dear god, we have to use the notched whip. This is the only thing in the game that starts with the letter N, which is odd to me, but before we take on Artie, we need to head to the Painted World. After arriving, I make it a point to be human and clear out this area, and I get invaded by Jeremiah. I decided to use a better weapon to actually fell the madman, and become one ourselves by using this thing. I upgraded the damn thing as much as I can in its time. And yeah, for the most part this wasn't all that bad. Don't get me wrong, he hits hard, and when he buffs, we're in trouble of being one-shot. And if we get caught in the spin cycle, we're goners. But this really isn't as bad as compared to runs where I have no control over my character for multiple seconds. It's a long, intense battle, but eventually we take him down. Time for the letter O. And some of you may have been wondering why I didn't just change the routing so I could use that whip on a weaker boss. The reason should become clear now, as it is time for Calamite, as he holds the key to our success. Or weapon, I should say. He contains the only weapon in the game that starts with O, the Obsidian Greatsword. Just ignoring the mindless routing I did, okay? If I didn't get to him now, we'd be in for a lot of pain. But now we only have to worry about some pain, as getting the tail cut isn't easy. I decided to use a strong weapon, and the best bet here is waiting until he does his flying dive attack. And if you're positioned properly, he'll do a slam attack with his tail, giving you plenty of time for one hit. Enough times and we get the weapon, and we restart the fight proper. I'm able to upgrade it once, but this is a pretty good weapon. Not that it's relevant, but you can actually buff this weapon. I actually played this fight quite risky as I didn't get extra flasks like I normally do. It came down to the last Estus and a sliver of health left, but with this cool looking attack I banished Calamite back to the Shadow Realm. Alright, time for P. Thankfully we have some pretty good options here, but I'm gonna hone in on the pickaxe. A weapon that I will have to grind for from these rock-carrying ogres in Blighttown. Thankfully this didn't take much time at all, and we need to return to the Painted World to obtain our next set of armor, the Painted set. I actually really like the fashion we've got going, so let's head to Manus. Not before dying way too many times in Dark Magic Alley, of course. Anyways, Manus is quite easy, as the pickaxe is pretty good upgraded. I was worried about Manus' dark magic, since any of it would have been a one-shot, and I couldn't use the silver pendant for obvious reasons. Thankfully I played well, and we take him down Minecraft style in what would be record time for this DLC. So now we've got Q, and there's only one option we can choose here. Let's take our already upgraded falchion and use Quelaag's soul to turn it into her Fury Sword. A beautiful weapon that we all know is good, and something I learned was that it actually scales with humanity. Man, that would have been nice to know earlier. Anyways, I return to the Painted World for the final time so we can take down Priscilla. There isn't much to say here. The sword is really good, and this fight is a cakewalk even with the parts I almost died at. But moving along quickly, we've got R. I didn't bother with armor since our pickings were rather thin, and for the weapon, I revisited Sin so we could pay our dear old friend Ricard a visit to acquire his rapier. Let's head down to Ceaseless and fight him, which definitely didn't happen after failing to skip him for about 45 minutes and got so frustrated I changed the routing. Nope, not at all. It was also at this point I realized I already had a weapon starting with R, the rapier. I think I got it from a random Baldur Knight along the way. Doesn't matter as we head to our next letter, S. And let me say, this was quite the process. I had Nito up next, and I had to keep the letter S so we could have access to a great weapon and tanky armor. Unfortunately, I would be unable to keep the Skellies down permanently, so let's head up the forest first for some armor and access to Shiva. And after tracking him down in Blighttown, we purchased the stone sword. I upgraded as high as possible, and let's make our way down to the Tomb of the Giants. Conveniently enough, I can also use the skull lantern to illuminate the way. Not that I needed it, since I know the layout quite well. Now we've got Nito, and let me say this was painful. From the damage, to me getting toxic, to having to run all the way back after every attempt. This was frustrating to say the least. I'm sure this has no correlation with my eventual success, but I got fed up and took out my anger on Leroy, and put on his shield so I get a tiny amount of passive health regen. And clearly something clicked since Nito went down the next try. Honestly have no idea if the sword's weapon art works on skeletons, but I didn't even bother, but whatever. Let's move on. Alright, letter T. There actually isn't a lot here. I opted for the tower shield. I could get the Titanite catch pull, but I didn't want to bother farming since our next boss would be the Bed of Chaos. I had to get in good grace with the fair lady, so I had access to the shortcut to Lost Izalith, and after getting wrecked by aforementioned catch pull, we're here. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie, this was near the end of the run, and I was so tired of having to run so far after every attempt that I made a save state right outside the boss door. I'm sorry if that ruins the challenge for you, but think of my sanity. Anyways, it's the Bed of Chaos. The tower shield is actually quite nice for blocking her attacks. I only died once to this boss and thankfully didn't get trolled too hard when I got near the Chaos bug. Okay, time for the letter U. And there's really one option here, the Ujigatana. I could have bothered finding Shiva again to buy one from him, but why do that when I can bully the Undead Merchant for his? The Demon Fire Sage was the boss I decided to use it on, and even barely upgraded this thing as effective due to the high bleed it inflicts. Thankfully this fight goes over quickly. Let's move on. Letter V. And surprise, it's time to go back to the Painted World where I get shredded one last time before picking up Velka's rapier. This is a weapon in Dark Souls. Fortunately, I'm able to fully upgrade it and our boss is only the Stray Demon, and while he doesn't die as quickly as his fiery cousin, we have no worries. Time for a bit more excitement in the run with the letter W. First, I made my way to the Valley of Drakes so I could do my best Zoli cosplay, and the War Pick was calling my name. In all actuality, it's just a one-sided pickaxe. I figured, let's wrap up the final Lord Soul by speeding through the Duke's archives in the Crystal Cavern. Yeah, this fight was a joke. I'm glad he decided not to spam his Crystal Explosion attack this time around. The damage from the War Pick is good, and I actually quite like the moveset it has. The Witch set is also really nice, just wish you didn't have to beat the 4 kings to get it. So now the real problem shows up here. Unfortunately, there's nothing in the game that starts with the letters X or Y that I could use to finish the bosses. Not a spell, weapon, or catalyst. It would appear that the run is over. However, to try and make the best of it, I've got a trick or two up my sleeve. Now, I'm gonna go a bit out of order here, but this is strictly for the video, not the actual timeline that played out when I recorded the run. So we've got the letter Y, and we've got the Taurus Demon. My strategy here was to use the Taurus Demon to take out the archers who would no doubt be annoying if I didn't bother. The plan was then to have the Taurus Demon jump off the edge, because as we all know, the Turkmen word for falling is this word. Yeah, I'm not even going to begin to try and pronounce that. So if one of the 7 million Turkmens watching this wants to throw down some knowledge in the comment section, I'd be happy to see it. Okay, does this actually count since this isn't an English letter? Probably not, but I bet you didn't expect to see a Turkmen reference in a Dark Souls video, so we'll just call it even and move back to the letter X. You can probably see why I saved these two bosses for last anyways. And while I could make another thin connection to different languages and the words gravity or falling down, I think the best thing to do here is some good old-fashioned cosplay. The conclusion I came to was to become a character that starts with the letter X, since that would be the next best thing. And it just so happens there is one character with such criteria. That's right, Xanthus King Jeremiah. I don his colorful attire, the whip that slayed Artorias, and a dream. I don't do a ton of damage, but I'm living like Jerry, and I think that's the most important thing. Okay, so at last we have the final boss, Gwen, and the final letter, Z. You'd probably know where this is going. We head to the graveyard outside Firelink, and acquire the legendary weapon itself, the Zweihander. Coincidentally, the only thing in this game that starts with Z. So let's upgrade it as much as we can, and it's time to end this run. The fight does have some challenges. While I can parry the opening move, not having a shield really complicates things, as it makes it hard to punish Gwyn, since he will absolutely destroy me if he leads off with his quick slash attack. My strategy was to keep the distance, bait out his jump attack, and parry him into the ground. Enough times when we finish this alphabet run as close as I possibly can. So did I actually complete the run? I guess by the rules I set, no, I didn't. You could say I should cycle through the valid weapons and letters instead, but there's an even amount of letters and bosses, so I tried to make it work as best as I could. I still had fun, even with it becoming annoying near the end due to being killed easily and having to run back immense distances. If you do this run, please level up your vitality and endurance. But I'm a challenge runner, I guess, not a walk through the park runner. Anyways, let me know if you liked the video and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this from me in the future. I really do enjoy making them. I'm Mr. Meta. Thanks for watching.